Well, hey there. It's been a little while since we got some work done on our cart, but we're back out and we just finished welding up the wheels. I just did a couple stitch welds on the sides of the casters. That way, heaven forbid they ever break, all you got to do is just grind those welds off and then weld new ones on. It's one of those things that I see a lot of people debate. Do you make plates to bolt them? Do you drill holes to bolt them? Do you weld them on? But for this, as the purpose of what it's going to do, we just need the wheel on the bottom of the cart. So those are welded on, and now we're going to take our sander, and I've got some fairly aggressive paper because this metal does have a lot of mill scale and some surface imperfections as well as spatter from the welding process. So we're going to sand this up and get it ready for primer and paint. Not the best camera angle, but we got to run with it. So cart has been sanded, as well as I've gone around the corners with the grinder to get additional slag and or spatter off. Unfortunately, it's just inevitable with a little machine like that. Just comes with the territory. However, with using like say nozzle gel and anti-spatter spray, that can help a lot, and I use that quite extensively in this. But now that we got it sanded, I'm going to take some good old degreaser, in this case brake clean. We're going to wipe off all the residue, get ready to put some primer on. Alright, so the time for paint has come. So we wiped it all down, it's now dried. I got a old bed sheet on the concrete because this is not my shop and I don't want to paint the floor. So first things first, I'm going to shoot this thing in primer, but I'm going to have to be careful in how I do this. As you see, I moved my workbench out of the way and I have this on the floor. And I'm going to have to paint in all these corners and crevices and try to get it as much even coverage as I can. So I'm thinking, and I'm crossing my fingers here, but I'm thinking if I paint just this surface, this surface, this surface, 3 shelves, and the inside of the legs with primer and maybe 1 coat of red, then I will flip it over, finish shooting primer and the final color, and then we will, in theory, be okay. Because I'm only going to be able to reach certain spots and I don't want to get fingerprints in the paint. So we're just going to use rattle cans here, and first up is the primer. Okay, the primer went down pretty nicely. We could also see with all of our sanding and grinding with the sander and the grinder, how we have a very nice uniform finish. And the primer, this is like a high build primer, so it'll kind of hide some of that. I'm not going to sand this though, I'm just going to do my best to lay this down as flat as possible. So now that the primer on this side has had a chance to flash off, I'm going to start putting on the final coat. And I'm only doing this because it's going to be hard to get to these underside, or to get to the underside of the 3 shelves once I flip this over and shoot primer and paint for the rest of the cart. Look at that! So it looks like our idea worked. There's a little bit of overspray. That's totally fine because I'm hoping the primer and subsequent final color will help tie all that together. With that being said, we now know the bottom of each shelf and the inside of the frame has adequate coverage. We'll still be able to get in from this angle as well, so the inside corners of the uprights will have some good coverage, but I wanted to make sure that there was minimal chance of making any sort of fingerprints or smearing paint on the bottom of the shelves and the bottom of the cart. So that being said, we are now going to move on back onto primer, and then we're going to shoot the color. I might just do that all in one video sequence. And there we go. The cart has been shot in primer and paint. Boy, man, on the camera, this makes it look like it's almost cherry red. I used the Ace brand primer and Regal Red. The client who commissioned this wanted it to match his Craftsman tool chest in his garage. So hoping when this dries it'll be a little bit lighter, or darker I mean, but it laid down pretty smooth. And we can see our sanding really paid off. It didn't look like it did much with the mill scale, but once I wiped off the residue and then shot it with primer, that alone made it a world of difference. I got a little bit of overspray over there, but there's a bunch of dirt on the floor, and so that is sweeping up. You can see by my footprints. So, but yeah, this is really cool. The one I built for myself, the prototype, if you will, that one I just shot with regular industrial black. It looks really nice, but I do have to admit, I really like the red. That looks pretty sharp. So now we just let it dry. I got the shop in here pretty warm. It's a warmer day today. That's another reason why I had to wait till I could paint, because it had been below freezing for over a week. But now we're sitting in the 50s, and I got the wood stove going and it's really hot in here. So that's gonna help bake this on, as well as some of the grinding and sanding I did, just kept the metal a little bit warm. So now I'm gonna clean up, and in a day or two, we're gonna come back and check this thing out and get it ready to go to its new home. So it has been another 3-4 days, but the cart was nice and dry, and I ran out to the shop to install the graphics, or add them rather. And now we can see how this dried and what it looks like in the sunlight. That paint really did lay down very, very nicely. I've been very happy with that stuff lately. We'll see how it holds up over time, but so far I've been very happy with it, both for personal projects and commission work. The color did dry a little bit darker like I hoped, much closer to that classic Craftsman red we're all super familiar with. Once I got the final stamp of approval from the client, I fired up the Cricut machine and cut out my decal and logo. I just used permanent white vinyl and my custom designed logo by yours truly. Well, thank you very, very much for following along. I hope you found this entertaining and a little insight to how I designed stuff, going from concept sketch to actually making it to final product. Thanks again very much for following along. Hope you like and maybe subscribe.